Chapter 1858, It is better to lose a son than to lose the first move. Liang Yu died in the battle with Alexei, and this was quickly learned by King Arthur's team. I didn't expect it, I really didn't. Chaos has actually made such a low-level mistake. Although not long ago, Zhang Yi's escape from under their noses surprised them. However, so soon after, Zhang Yi has lost a comrade in arms, which made King Arthur and the others feel relieved. Ichigard said coldly, "War is a time to test the mettle of a king. Merely possessing great personal ability is not enough to be a true king." Everyone's attention was focused on him, as if they all felt that they were the true king. "What are you going to do, Lord Ichigard?" King Arthur folded his arms and looked at him leisurely. "Now that the Chaos team has suffered one casualty, do you still plan to continue leading your men to finish them off first?" Upon hearing this, Ichigard pondered for a while before smiling and saying, "There's no need. There are only 4 of them left, and apart from that guy Chaos, who seems to have some ability, the rest of them seem to be little-known nobodies. This team can no longer pose a threat to us. In that case, there's no need to risk a decisive battle with them." King Arthur sneered, "I didn't think you'd change your attitude so quickly." Ichigard pointed to his head. "This is the mindset of a king. If we had attacked them at the beginning, we could have taken them by surprise. But now that they are at war with each other, the situation is different. Why don't we take advantage of their conflict and maximize our gains?" King Arthur looked at Ichigard, who was expressing his opinions, with a sneer on his face. "The biggest problem right now is still ourselves. 6 people, 6 different opinions, and no leader. Are we really going to be a disunited group? Everyone, we need to race against time." Ichigard looked up proudly. "Needless to say, the only person here who can be the leader is me. I, Ichigard, was born to be a king." King Arthur smiled and shook his head, Odin snorted, and Olive turned his head away. Pokong and the mysterious man in black said nothing, obviously no one was paying any attention to him. Ichigard's eyes sank. For now, they had to think of a way to decide who would be the leader. But a head-to-head battle was obviously unwise. During the previous clash between Odin and Ichigard, both sides had held back and not really fought with all their strength. However, if it was a fight for dominance, the battle might escalate. Perhaps they will suffer heavy casualties before they even have to fight other teams. Therefore, the most important thing now is to choose a team leader in a way that is acceptable to most people. Miranda sighed. They are also facing the same problem, which is who should be the team leader. Alexei naturally supports her, but Chang Wuan and the other 2 do not agree with Miranda's leadership. However, they also know that there is huge pressure from the outside, so they are still on good terms on the surface. But now, things have changed again. After Alexei's battle with Liang Yu, the status of their duo has also increased a lot. After returning, Miranda rarely spoke more. The Chaos team has now been reduced to only 4 people. Saladin stroked his beard and said indifferently, "So at the moment, our biggest opponent is actually King Arthur's team." He frowned, "This is not a good situation." "What's wrong? Isn't it a good thing that we won a battle?" Alexei asked. Saladin stroked his beard and analyzed the situation calmly. "From a situational point of view, if each of us can ensure that we remain fully rational, then the Chaos team should join forces with us to fight the most powerful King Arthur team. But from a realistic point of view, we have just clashed with the Chaos team. If the other party is guided by emotional considerations, they may be willing to go to any lengths to start a war with us. But even if they remain rational, after analyzing the situation, they know that their chances of winning are slim, so they will maximize their profits. And right now, the key to who will ultimately win between us and Team King Arthur is who can get the help of the Chaos team." Saladin looked at the crowd and said, "This is the most troublesome part. Since whoever they help will win, why would they help us if we destroy their people first?" Miranda and Alexei's expressions became grave. No one expected such a turn of events. Saladin drew his curved sword from his waist and drew a triangle on the ground. At the beginning, the strength of the 3 of our forces was not very different, presenting a stable triangular relationship. But now, the balance has been broken. He made an X on one of the triangles. No one expected the Chaos team to make such a major mistake and lose a key combatant on the first day of the war. This has almost disqualified them from competing for the final victory. The original triangle has now become a balance. And the Chaos team has become the weight that determines the outcome. At this moment, Chang Luan, who had been silent, spoke up after listening to Saladin's analysis. His voice was cold, as if it were springing from an ice spring. But what if they don't give up? Even if they lose one person, we can't completely trust them to give up competing for the final victory, Saladin said. That's true. But the premise of our cooperation with the Chaos team is to make sure that they have to give up competing for the final victory. We will definitely let them bear the main risk during the battle. We might even let them switch sides with the other party. We are all smart people, no one is stupid. Morana nodded. I understand. She looked at Alexei and said, let's contact Chaos now and ask him to help us. Saladin looked at Morana and said, are you sure? Morana's eyes showed no emotion as she said in her usual cold tone, although I haven't had much contact with him, I can tell that he is a very wise guy. At a time like this, he should know what choice to make as the weakest party. After Morana finished speaking, she directly adopted the simplest method to communicate with Zhang Yi, which was to dial Zhang Yi's communication number. At this time, Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin were hidden under the wind and sand. Behind them, Lu Karen was holding a sharp sword in her hand, and with a single swing, she instantly cut a huge rock into hundreds of neat pieces, and then ordered the 5,000 soldiers to stack them up. These soldiers had no thoughts or emotions, and they completely obeyed the orders of the trial participant, which was very useful. Lu Karen worked hard to restore the city to its original appearance. Fortunately, the other two forces did not have the opportunity to investigate nearby, so it was not difficult to fool them. Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin sat on the sofa, quietly waiting for the other two teams to come and negotiate with them. Brian, on the other hand, sat elegantly sipping coffee. He is a standard Fremon's dog, not very focused on the purpose of this operation. Since Zhang Yi and the others have arranged everything, he is happy to relax. Yang Xinxin said, if there are no unexpected circumstances, the first person to contact us should be Morana. Zhang Yi looked at her, resting his chin in one hand, and casually asked, why would it be her? Yang Xinxin gave a simple analysis. When you returned from the King Arthur team, you saw that they had not formed a unified pattern. In other words, as the strongest team, they are still fighting for the right to speak. None of those guys are willing to be second best. So in the short term, if they can't reach a consensus, they can't act externally even more. In contrast, the Morana team, which is in second place, will be more likely to unite due to external pressure. The only people among them who are relatively familiar with us are the Fremons. Alexei just killed Liang Yu, so it's not appropriate for him to come forward. So only Morana will come to you to discuss cooperation in detail. As soon as Yang Xinxin's voice fell, Zhang Yi's intelligence system received a communication request. Zhang Yi glanced at it and sure enough, it was Morana. Zhang Yi gave a faint smile and spoke aloud so that Yang Xinxin could hear as well. Morana. Zhang Yi's tone was cold, as if he was still annoyed by the incident. Morana asked, what, are you still angry because we killed one of your team members? The chaos of the Huashu kingdom is not a place for people who get carried away by anger, is it? Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows, a good move of provocation. He exchanged glances with Yang Xinxin, his voice still tinged with anger. Morana, are you declaring war on me? Morana let out a laugh, but it was clearly a mocking laugh. You are a very clever person, and you should know that whoever makes the first move will reveal their weaknesses. Our biggest enemy right now is the team that King Arthur is on. Continuing to fight you will only expose us to attack from both sides. Zhang Yi sneered, I'm glad you know. Morana said, Chaos, let's cooperate. Oh? Zhang Yi's sneer remained, and at this time, he didn't need to take the initiative to speak, because the outcome of the battle seemed to be in the hands of his team. Morana and King Arthur's team, on the contrary, needed to look at his face. This was a very strange balance, and even Zhang Yi had to admire Yang Xinxin for being able to come up with such a tactic. Morana said, "You now have only 4 people, and as far as I know, the young girl by your side is not very strong in direct combat. Even if you add that unruly dog from Colombia, your strength is hardly something to brag about. So now, the possibility of your achieving final victory is close to 0. You should understand this." Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow and sneered, "And then what? We can't achieve final victory, but you can? If I want, I can cooperate with King Arthur and the others to get rid of you." Morana was unruffled. "But what's the point of doing that? If you've already decided to give up the fight for final victory, then you might as well maximize your own interests." Zhang Yi deliberately fell silent for a while so that the other party would think he was caught in a painful struggle. Then Zhang Yi said, "Ask us to give up? Ah, it's not that easy. What makes you say such a thing?" Morana could tell that although Zhang Yi was unwilling to do so, his tone had softened. She was also speaking into the microphone at this point, because the conversation with Zhang Yi required everyone to monitor the situation together to prevent Morana from doing anything inappropriate. "We will give you sufficient compensation. In return, you need to stand with us and help us defeat Team King Arthur." Morana directly stated her intentions. Sufficient compensation. Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes and said each word carefully. "Explain to me what you mean by adequate compensation," Morana said. "Just give me a moment," she said, turning off her microphone and then looking at the others. "The help of the Chaos team is essential if we want to pass this level. But we must pay an adequate price," she said, her gaze falling inadvertently on Chang Luan and the guy in the heavy combat suit with the rippling reflection inside his helmet. It was almost certain that they did not come from any of the human forces. Therefore, it was crucial to reach a consensus with them and get them to cede their interests. That was the difficult part. Amongst the top mutants of humanity, there were still rules of integrity to be upheld. Promises made to each other would not be broken lightly, otherwise one might pay a huge price for treachery one day in the future. But for different species, credit could be worthless. Chang Luan and the mysterious mutant called Sacrifice looked at each other with strange expressions. They had not expected that, in order to participate in this trial, they would need to join forces with humans. This was obviously very troublesome. They also did not trust Morana and the others. Chang Luan asked coldly, "Can you guarantee that after we have given sufficient benefits, he will definitely keep his promise?" "I don't trust your human promises at all." Saladin couldn't help but ponder. This was indeed a difficult matter. It was difficult for humans and aliens to trust each other. Chang Luan's words also made sense. If they left this world, they could simply forget about the agreement. But if they gave something valuable to Chaos now, what if Zhang Yi didn't keep his promise after getting the item? He could even double-cross them and go to Team King Arthur after taking their item. Since it was already clear that it would be difficult to advance to the next level, he might as well reap more benefits. Even if it was for the sake of balance in the human camp, he would not take advantage of the strong humans. Judging from Saladin's knowledge of Zhang Yi, he would definitely not talk about integrity with these foreigners. Time passed, and the scene fell into a stalemate. Zhang Yi was in no hurry. He said to Morana, "You'd better think clearly about what price you want to pay to get me to help you, and then come back to me." After saying this, Zhang Yi ended the call directly. Leaning back on the sofa, he said leisurely, "Next, I'll just wait for King Arthur and the others to come to me. I'll see what kind of price they can pay." Yang Xinxin took a sip of tea and said with a smile, "Let's give them a little time to sweat it out. The time limit for the war is 7 days, and the more anxious they are, the more likely they are to make mistakes." As for Morana, although they hadn't discussed what to ask Zhang Yi's team to do, her goal had already been achieved. Zhang Yi's relief meant that they only needed to solve the immediate problem in order to form a coalition with Zhang Yi's team and then defeat King Arthur's team with an absolute advantage and achieve final victory. However, there were still many troublesome matters involved. Even if their team wins, they will ultimately have to face each other, which makes it difficult for them to truly form a trusting relationship. I have to say, this trial by the manager is too clever. In this level, the complexity of human nature is fully revealed. Everyone must be suspicious of each other, and no one can be completely trusted. Whoever can grasp the hearts and minds of others and handle multiple relationships with ease is the only one qualified to achieve ultimate victory. Positive combat ability, on the contrary, seems less important. Towards the end of the first day, King Arthur's message arrived. Although they still couldn't resolve the issue of who the leader should be, everyone seemed to realize that no one could really command the respect of the others. So they finally decided that when they encountered complex problems, they would solve them through discussion, and no one would have absolute power of speech. However, they were still able to agree on basic action plans. For example, they now also knew that they should try to win over Team Zhang Yi. They must win over Zhang Yi's team to their side in order to maximize their chances of victory. Neutral? No such thing. If Zhang Yi's team stays neutral and they go at it, they're just waiting for someone else to reap the rewards. So in this situation, Zhang Yi's team must also choose a side. King Arthur's call was answered by Zhang Yi. "Hey, Arthur, it's been a while." Zhang Yi's voice was deep and you could tell he wasn't in a good mood. King Arthur said, "Chaos, I've heard what's happened on your side. Right now, you only have 4 fighters left." Zhang Yi gave a faint smile and said, "But don't forget, I still have 5,000 soldiers in my hands. They're equivalent to 5 trialists." King Arthur's heart stirred, but then he laughed and said, "Soldiers are just tools. If no one guides them, they can't exert their full power. What do you say? Do you want to join forces with us? I can help you avenge Morana and Alexei." King Arthur deliberately used this incident to provoke Zhang Yi in the hope of arousing his anger. Who knew Zhang Yi would just sneer? "Not really angry, it's not like I've actually died. Arthur, don't underestimate me. Although I'm angry right now, I haven't lost my senses. I'll tell you the truth. Morana approached me a few hours ago. They're willing to give up enough of their interests and join forces with us." King Arthur's eyes flashed with a fierce light, and he felt a little uneasy. "You agreed to their terms?" "Of course not." Zhang Yi laughed, then narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "I've been waiting for you. We are all intelligent people, so there is no need to pretend to be ignorant when we understand. That would just look childish." So Zhang Yi spoke plainly. "You are right, our team may seem to be the weakest at the moment. But I will not give up the opportunity one have worked so hard for. I will not give in. Even if it means death, I will just be reborn in the outside world. I have nothing to fear." His voice became deeper, like the whisper of a demon. "Therefore, I am now the one who decides who among you will win. Arthur, what can you possibly say to convince me?" King Arthur took a deep breath. Then he flashed a broad smile. "Chaos, just say it. What do you want in return for siding with us?" Zhang Yi thought for a moment and said, "They promised me 5 spirits of sacrifice." King Arthur almost fell over where he stood. 5 spirits of sacrifice? Chaos, you're exaggerating a bit too much." King Arthur was no fool. How important was the spirit of sacrifice? 1 spirit of sacrifice could shape a mutant of epsilon level. And 5 spirits of sacrifices, looking at the whole world, no country or organization could come up with it. It's not that they haven't had them before, it's just that the first time they get something like this, they'll use it to the fullest to create powerful epsilon level mutants. Who would hoard it? Zhang Yi said indifferently, "Believe it or not. Compared to the treasures of the trial of the mighty god-level civilization, do you think 5 spirits of sacrifice are a lot?" This, of course, is what Zhang Yi himself said. In any case, he was asking for the moon and giving a penny, starting with a big price and then backing down. Now Zhang Yi is in a seller's market, and no matter what he says, the other party has to listen with patience. The first day passed like this. The next day, Liu Karen also built a replica of the city with the help of the 5,000 soldiers. The materials were all taken from the sand dunes of the Gobi Desert, and after the wind and sand blew through, all traces were erased. Even the statue standing in the center of the city looked no different from the original. Even if you look closely, it is hard to tell that this is a fake city. Zhang Yi is now biding his time, waiting for the other two parties to come to a conclusion. However, this is actually not important to Zhang Yi. Because from the very beginning, he has never intended to withdraw from this trial. He wants to slowly wear away all of the other parties' patience, causing them to conflict with each other and unable to form a unified opinion. Only loose alliances are easier to break. The next day, Morana found Zhang Yi and told him the result of their discussion overnight. The kingdom of Fremons is the cornerstone of our trust. After we leave here, we will give you a large amount of supplies as compensation. This includes the Reaper of Love. Whether you need the finished product or the source uranium, we can provide it. She even gave Zhang Yi a list directly. Looking at the long list of supplies, Zhang Yi, Yang Xinxin, and Lu Karen all smiled. It was clear that they were very concerned about this. But Zhang Yi didn't even bother to take a closer look. He said to Morana, "Do you think these things are of any value to me?"